Okay, there we go. Good evening, everyone. Gavin Syme here, and this is our Patreon-only stream, which there may not be a lot of you in, and that's okay because this stream is set up to do Q&As and things like that, and it's all about being able to talk to you guys. The truth is, the notification system on Patreon is a little weird, so I'm still trying to get my head around that. And the Patreon is new. We only have about, I think, 30 or 40 of you guys on the Patreon and take all the questions and interact with everybody. And so these Patreon live streams are kind of for a level of personal interaction that's a bit more. Sometimes if we talk about something good, they may go live on the main YouTube channel afterward, once they're no longer live, but sometimes they may not. And the goal of these is just to be able to have direct one-on-one conversations. So first of all, whether you're watching this right now or later on, welcome to our first Patreon live stream. And excuse me trying to get the planning and the scheduling and the tech worked out. As we grow the Patreon, I'm going to be looking for ways to make sure you guys are appraised of when the live streams are as much as possible. I did schedule it for earlier today, but the links seemed like they kind of weirded out, and I don't even know if it sent you guys notifications. So you can drop a comment down here on Patreon and let me know. And I will, of course, be still doing regular live streams on the channel and continuing to build the Exile show. That's what you guys are supporting and helping keep going, is those videos, and I really appreciate it. I just, as one of my commitments to you guys as Patreon supporters was these monthly Q&A sessions. So even if it's just two of us in here, whatever, right? Even if it's just me talking, I want to make sure I fulfill my commitment to you guys. I see there is a few of you guys popping in there. And if you click through to the actual YouTube video, if you're watching on the Patreon channel, let me just actually click here and see what this does. Let's take a look. If you're watching on the Patreon, it might not, yeah, because it plays here on the Patreon and I see myself live. But if you're watching it on Patreon, it's not going to allow you to comment live and do interactions here. So Patreon could use some improvements here. I'm actually going to paste the direct link, but you can also just click the YouTube logo in here, and but I just posted the link in this post. I see Hola Dolores, bien y tú, and I see that you guys are commenting in there. Now the best place to comment for the live stream is not really on here, but to actually just click through to the YouTube video, although I'll try and watch the live stream chat too, so we're interacting on both fronts. And let me just go here. And you can just click the YouTube logo here as you're watching the video, and it will take you right through to the actual YouTube interface. So if you're on YouTube, you'll be able to use the chat room over there as well, which is pretty cool. So that's going to be a little more interactive. We're gonna grow this. This is something I want to expand on because I think we can do a lot with a little more private Q&A. Trail, there you are. Good to see you, man. So good to see a couple of you guys in here, and this is even as the Patreon grows and we get this dialed in, we'll be able to have some fun with this because it will be very one-on-one. I mean, even if the Patreon gets big, there's still going to be a limited number of people, where sometimes on the main chat we have hundreds of people, and so it's a very different environment that we can do in here. And I don't have to worry when I'm doing live. I gotta say, I mean, this is just for our Patreons. Like when I'm live, I kind of have to keep that pace. And sometimes I want us to talk and go down the rabbit trails and stop and visit with people's comments and stuff. But it doesn't really work that way if you want to have an engaging live stream, because it's going to be rebroadcast. It's not going to stay live. And so when you're live on those kind of things, it makes it that you kind of got to keep moving forward. This is one of the things I learned in public speaking when I started running for office and doing videos, is you have to keep your eye on the ball. You got to not go down all these rabbit trails. And if you do want to go down another trail, you have to kind of splice it in a way that's communicative, so people aren't just getting frazzled and scatterbrained. So it looks like we just have 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. It's kind of going up and down in here, which is cool. I'm looking at your comment. Hang on, Trails. The mass. Okay, Trail says, do you think the mass confinement centers they're asking for our military bases will be converted to internment camps to re-educate those that oppose the government? You know, that's an interesting question, but I think, Trail, that in a way, like, the re-education is already happening. When you look at the sheer level of ignorance, right? You look at the 5 immigrants that were killed under the false pretense that they were illegal immigrants. The police were illegally chasing them. You guys saw that video I did probably last week. And people were actually using the argument like, well, these idiots, they put 12 people in one car. And I was just blown away by the level, not only the level of hatred, but the level of ignorance from these people. It wasn't very long ago that we were all loading our families and 12 people in the back of a station wagon and going down to have a picnic, right? So the re-education has already happened in our education halls and our public schools. And I think we're getting to the point where they're not going to try, the people that are awake have already rejected the re-education. So I think what's going to happen increasingly is we're just going to see expansion of the killing from police, the for-profit prisons, and all the stuff that goes along with it. And I think with that, they will be taking military internment centers and stuff like that, because even though there's a lot of people dumbed down, it seems like there is a growing number of people that are starting to wake up a little bit, and those people are going to have to be dealt with. And this is why I say know when to get out, because they are going to start filling up. I mean, today it's Walmart concentration camps for, quote, illegal immigrants, but down the road, it's more than that. And I haven't seen, Trail, the specific story you're talking about, but yeah, I can totally believe it. If they're setting up confinement camps of 20,000 rooms on military bases, they're looking for a solution to mass confinement. But let's not pretend we don't already have concentration camps. I mean, I don't think most of you in here I have to convince of that. You know, that's what these prisons are. They're slave camps, they're concentration camps. Oftentimes they're death camps, maybe not to the degree that we've seen in history past yet, but I think they'll get there. I think it'll come to the time, because if you look at the ignorance of the people of the United States, and even especially probably the most ignorance comes from the so-called church and you know, patriots, who in reality are the #1 worshipers of the state. They will be cheering people into the death camps because, well, he shouldn't have done that. That was unpatriotic. He shouldn't have questioned. He shouldn't have resisted. He deserves it. They put too many people in a car. And so this will come to a point where when it happens, fake church and fake patriots, they will be cheering the internment camps, and they will be cheering the death camps when we get to that point. I think that at this point, one of my biggest tasks at this point is to try and speak for the prisoners, like the Schaefer Coxes, the Jeff Winehouses, who are just constantly abused in the prison system and still locked away, the Leonard Peltiers, the people that they've just taken everything from. And I can't wait till the day that the walls of these prisons are just laid flat, because no one in these prisons, despite some of them actually having done bad things, no one in these prisons is actually been given a fair trial. And many of the people in these prisons, a good portion of them, there was not even a victim and there was not even a crime, and there certainly wasn't a fair trial. Doris, hola, good to see you in there. And yes, the YouTube chat is much more interactive. I'm not even sure if the Patreon chat does it in real time. The Patreon really should have a link where it clicks you straight through to YouTube, because with a YouTube video, far and away the best chatting is here on the live. So anyways, I'm glad we got a couple of you guys in there. We probably won't go super long tonight, but if you have anything else you want to add or questions, I'm going to start these out pretty simple. And as we grow the Patreon and people start understanding that, hey, we're going to do some special live streams over here where we can talk about more specifics, we can talk about law, we can talk about freedom, heck, we can talk about the truth van or the van that you're building, whatever, right? And that's the point of the Patreon live streams, is just to do something one-on-one to thank you guys and to interact and to exchange ideas, because I really do appreciate, obviously the Patreon's not paying my bills, but more and more I am trying to do more video content, more production, and trying to gradually expand content production as more of an integral part of my day job, because if bills are being paid, I can spend more time on something. That's simply the way it works. So wherever my food is coming from is where I tend to work. And we're actually almost up to 200,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel, which is really cool. You know, things don't go viral every time because people kind of, there's a swath of followers on the channel that they just want to see me fighting with cops. They don't actually care, unfortunately, about the message or standing up or learning. There is a lot of subscribers that are just there for entertainment, and I try to be entertaining, right? But we're trying to build content here that matters and that carries a message and that speaks out against Blue ISIS and the thugs. So, Doris, I got to be honest, I don't think much but disdain about anything that Trump does. Trump is waging war on the Constitution, and the idea that we say our government is literally committing acts of treason. The federal government has no authority over immigration. They certainly don't have authority to detain people who have committed no crime, because there is no victim and there can't be a crime, and because all the immigration laws are illegal because they are a violation of the Constitution, which makes them under the doctrine of the law, the founding fathers, everything immediately void. So there are no immigration restrictions that are lawful in the USA. There's just illegal regulations. But when I see people cheering and saying, well, look, isn't he compassionate? Now he's going to kidnap the entire family together and traffic them to a concentration camp instead of just doing, separating the family and trafficking them to separate camps. So aren't we good? We have slavery, but we're allowing the families to stay together. And that's what the system is really saying. Hang on, my main light just went off here for some reason. Maybe it's getting too hot. I'm not sure. Now it looks fine. I don't know what's going on. Hang on a second. I'll get it here. I actually just got this new light that is mostly for my photography, but it's a phenomenal video light. What the hey? And I'm still working out the kinks. There we go. Let me actually turn it down just a little bit so that we can, man. Here I go again, messing with my lights, but you know what? This is a patron-only stream, so we can do this, right? Hang on. I'm gonna get this. I think I'll get this. Bear with me. It's good enough. I'll fix this later. There we go. Okay, anyways. So yeah, I got this enormous, not enormous in softbox terms, but this really nice strobe light for photography. And then I'm trying to get the light softer in here, see what I mean? I mean, the harsh light, because YouTube gives me very little control. So by having a large light source, pro tip from a master photographer, the larger your light source is relative to your subject, the nicer your light will be. Okay, hang on, I'm gonna come back to your comments that you guys just made because they just kind of faded off. So let me see here. Yeah, you're right, Trail. It's like they put the Japanese Americans in internment camps and kept them together, right? They took care of them. Does that make it okay? Of course not. So this all comes back to the simple rule of law, and people have this idea of, well, somebody tread into my country, and I have a right to put a fence around my country. Absolutely not. You don't. You don't have a right to impede anyone's travel, and the land is for beneficial use. The land is public. You can have a border and you can monitor that border to protect your community, but you can't impede an individual from traveling unless you suspect them and have probable cause and follow the law and have a suspicion of them committing a crime and follow through accordingly. So the truth is the government doesn't even have any right to ask anybody for ID at the border. If somebody wants to walk across the border, they should. And this is a message that people are starting to realize more and more, and it's something that I've been pushing, and I'm starting to see it in other people's content where we're getting away from the emotional argument of, but we need to be nice. Well, we do. We should love our neighbor as ourselves. But it's more than just an emotional argument. There's no historical basis for requiring papers. The very idea of it is completely contrary to the principles of freedom. And so the hypocrisy blows my mind, because these patriots are like, how dare the government make me have a driver's license? And then they say, how dare an immigrant come here without ID and papers and permission? It's completely irrational. So we're living in this cognitive dissonant society. And unfortunately, that's trickling down to other countries. So, the USA spends a lot of money. They pay big bucks to Mexico to try and get them to abuse immigrants as well, because it legitimizes what they're doing. And even though in reality, the Mexican government does not treat immigrants anything like the US does, the idea of just taking people's kids and locking them away would not be tolerated here. But the US government gives Mexico and the government and the politicians here an immense amount of money to try and get them to play the game. And they buy stuff for them and gear and equipment and training and give them, get them to set up checkpoints and things like that. It's just like the drug war. All of this is pushed. The USA has been manipulating and undermining and disrupting and destabilizing countries in Latin America for well over 100 years now. And it's just something they keep continuing to do, because if Latin America stays beat down, the USA can use them for cheap labor, but also they can use them to legitimize their crimes against humanity and their terrorism. And that's just what we are. It's time to admit that our country, the USA, is the #1 terrorist nation in the world. We're not a free country. We're not great. We're repressive, and we're a shame to freedom. And so we say, well, we want to honor the troops or the police or this or that, but that's rubbish. You don't honor people that are abusing people. I recognize that many people join the military with good intentions, and they want to help their country, but they have no idea what's going on. In the end, they just say, well, I'm going to follow orders and do whatever I'm told. The police are even a lower level of low, because most of them are not even out to help anybody by the time they get through the system. They're just out to be egotistical goons that are authorities over people. Some of them get into police work thinking they're going to help people, but they quickly compromise themselves and start, commit crimes against humanity for profit and a paycheck. So that's not freedom. That's not respectable, and it's certainly not something that deserves honor. And this is why I catch a lot of flack from the haters, because I'm not willing to play the faction game. But we're gaining ground in that by opposing the police, by opposing the immigration restrictions, by simply standing up. And people say we're haters and we're divisive, but they're the ones that are hateful and divisive. They hate law, they hate freedom, they hate the foreigner, they hate the free thinker, and they want to divide the world against them. And we're simply trying to take it back from that precipice and say, no, we have to have some rationale. But will it save the USA? No, the USA is already long gone. And so I don't know what will become of that piece of land in the future, but the USA as we know it is going down, which is why I'm encouraging people to know your exit options, because they're saying, oh no, everything's good, I'm here, I got a good job, it's fine. Well, it's not going to be. The USA is going down. And so you say, I can't leave, I'm making money. Well, just look for options. It's not like you have to panic and live in fear, but examine your options, because I don't know how long it'll be. But the USA is not going to be continuing to the far future. If it gets rebuilt, maybe, but if it gets rebuilt, that won't happen until complete collapse and chaos, because the movement is simply too asleep. It's interesting. In terms of the elections in Mexico, I don't really get in. I'm following. It's curious. It's interesting to me, but obviously I'm not, getting involved and pushing for a politician. I'm not a citizen here. I can't vote, and that is something that is in reality. We say voting's a right, but voting isn't really a right. Voting is a privilege of a person that lives in that community. Now, should you have to be a citizen or have residency somewhere to live and work? Absolutely not. But if you want to say, look, I want to elect the people who I'm hiring to protect and manage our community under law, to protect life, liberty, and property, which is the only things that government is allowed to protect, to enforce rather, because that's the only authority you have, therefore the only authority you can give to an employee. So it is interesting, because it's reasonable, I think, in general, that somebody who's not a citizen or a resident or whatever you want to call it, right, is not electing the politicians. It is interesting, because I hear people talking about AMLO and saying he's a socialist and this and that, and I haven't actually seen a whole lot of that. I think that all these guys are politicians in Mexico. But he's actually, what I have seen, not knowing a lot about the politics, is he's disrupting the status quo. He's a new third party, and it looks like he might win here. So understand the magnitude. This will be the equivalent of basically a libertarian winning the presidency in the United States. And there's people that say, oh, he's going to turn us into a socialist hole. But from what I've heard of people talking about him and what he said, I think he might have a little bit of the social program kind of mindset of we can make things better with this, but it's not what the propaganda, as usual, it's not what the propaganda says from what I'm seeing. I'm not saying if AMLO gets elected, he'll be a great guy. I have yet to see a politician that really fixes things, but he actually does speak out against the militarized police and the aggressiveness and things like that, which as coming as a escapee from the USA, I like hearing people in positions that are getting noticed talking about that. But at this point, I'm not at the stage where I'm getting involved in politics other than just casually observing what's going on and finding it fascinating. I mean, they have very election season is very fervent here, and people are out spray painting signs of the people they don't like, and there's huge parades of horses or just hundreds of cars going down streets honking their horns and waving signs. Maybe they're paying them to do it, or maybe some of them are just diehard fans. I don't know, but politics are kind of the same here, but also kind of different. There's a lot less social media kind of stuff going on, and more just like people on the streets, huge crowds of people waving signs and things like that. What I do know is it's well known that the two main parties here that have been in power for a long time are very corrupt, and they're not happy that this AMLO third party is winning in the polls, as near as I can tell, and they are just coming up with these insane ads that are super, super clingy and desperate to try and win people over, because people here actually, we have the same problem. Somebody says good things and we elect them. But actually, I think the electorate here is far more engaged and awake and not as willing to just, go with party. I think they're less, I identify with this party, and more like, we need an alternative so we can throw our parties out. And so they definitely seem more engaged on that level. But maybe in the future, if down the road I stay here and I get citizenship, then I'm sure I will get involved in some way in what's going on and be a louder voice on that front. But for now, I'm just kind of observing and trying to hold my own and get my feet under me still. Leaving your country overnight and coming somewhere else and just trying to get all that sorted out has been a very large process. Definitely the biggest step. It's about the biggest step you could ever make, short of maybe getting married. But God's been taking care of us, and we're thankful. And so I'm just going to keep pushing. I'm thankful for the business and just trying to keep growing different avenues of the business, the content creation, things like that. So, all right, you guys, I think we're going to wrap up here. I hope this has been interesting for those of you that were here. And of course, anyone else on the Patreon page will be able to see this video. The video itself at this point is unlisted, and I may just leave it that way, honestly. But those of you that didn't tune in for the live will be able to come into the Patreon page and see this video posted on there. And we'll do this again. So let me know what you guys want to see on our little one-on-one live streams here, and it's interesting. Doris, no, AMLO is a new party. He has been, I believe he did run for president before, and he's been in office before, so he's not a new politician. But the party, he bailed on his other parties and went and started another independent party. And I forget the name of it offhand, but it really turned up the apple cart, and it's kind of a big deal for the fact that a presidential candidate just said, no, we're done with these parties. They've screwed us over for too long. We're going to go start another one. And just like that, it took off. It really speaks to how much, that people are frustrated and that people want something different. So, but yes, he has been in office before. I think he's ran for president before under one of the other parties. And no doubt, I mean, politicians always have political motivations in my experience. So probably he thought, well, maybe I can get on edge by skipping their party and going and doing my own. And he did. In fact, a lot of the other smaller parties that the Green Party kind of split parties that are down here, they actually united forces for this race and the presidential candidate with him, which caused a big blow to the good old boy parties down here. And so that was interesting, just to watch all this stuff that these guys are doing as they do their elections, and how things are going. And then the other parties went out and tried to make some unions too with other small parties so that they could, turn around and say, look, we're working with people too. Very different atmosphere and culture of the parties, because they're always trying to prove themselves as a party and to the people, and the people are less and less buying it. It seems like they're getting very frustrated, and so these parties that have been, just like our Republican Democrat Party, been screwing us over for years. But here I see complete desperation in the way that some of these guys are behaving. But anyways, I'm not going to go too on about the Mexican politics, because as someone, pre and pan is what they're called, and as someone who's kind of an immigrant, I'm just not that engaged, and it's not really something that I can get that engaged with and without being just as a visitor. So at this point, I'm just observing and finding it fascinating how the culture works, and I am hoping that the people of Mexico are smart enough to be wise and to not simply do what we've done in the USA with Trump and Bush and pretty much every candidate in the past, I don't know, forever. They can win, so I'm just going to vote the compromise, just like we did with Donald Trump, when it was very clear from the beginning that he would be an enemy of the Constitution and that he would trample freedom. It was all just hatred and division and fueling people's arrogance that he won on, which is very sad. But the people in Mexico are not as brainwashed sheep. So thank you, Doris and Trail. Good to see you guys in there. And we're gonna almost 30 minutes, which I think is about the perfect length for a live stream like this. So I'm gonna go for now. I hope you guys have a good weekend, and I'll keep doing live streams on the Facebook page, facebook.com/callmegavin, on the YouTube channel, and we'll just keep trying to grow the channel. Appreciate you guys' support, particularly your support here on the Patreon, and it helps a lot. And it's also just an encouragement, right? I mean, we don't make a lot of money on the Patreon at this point, but it's an encouragement to see some consistency growing from that. And the Patreon support here helps me put a little more time into the Exile show and the better production shows that we're doing for the channel and things like that. So big thank you to you guys, and we will talk very soon. All right, guys, peace. Have a good night.